WVLT Newsroom as we bring you further updated and breaking information after Mayor Glenn Jacobs announced just a few minutes ago that he is actively working for the county to take over control of the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Center here in Knox County. This comes after the mayor says that two whistleblowers were fired by Bean himself after he found out that they had been raising concerns within the Juvenile Justice Center. The mayor saying one of the people fired by Bean himself was the center's only qualified nurse who was raising concerns about the treatment and health provided to folks being held at the Juvenile Center in the past several years. The reason why this has become an even bigger deal than the county trying to take over the Juvenile Justice Center is because this is not the first time issues have been arisen inside of that Juvenile Justice Center. If you go back just 2 years to 2023, a ProPublica Nashville Public Radio story broke that kids were being held in solitary confinement far more often than any other juvenile center in the state of Tennessee. And so today, the mayor, after meeting with Juvenile Court Judge Tim Irwin, said that they are now working to take over control of the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Justice Center to be able to possibly have that be fully county run. Right now, the Justice Center is run by a board of 3 people, and there are concerns that those 3 individuals are not doing what is necessary to make sure that this Juvenile Justice Center is run the correct way. So Mayor Glenn Jacobs now saying that he is going to go to County Commission to have them change the ordinance to take over the Justice Center and have it be officially run by the Knox County Sheriff's Office. Again, Mayor Jacobs taking right now to video earlier today to share his thoughts and why he believes this is the correct course of action. Here is what Mayor Jacobs had to say just a short while ago.
Hello, I'm Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. I would like to address the situation that we have all become aware of at the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Detention Center here in Knox County. This past Tuesday, Juvenile Court Judge Tim Irwin called to inform me that Superintendent Bean had fired 2 employees, apparently in retaliation for reporting problems at the center to state investigators. Obviously, this is a very serious matter, compounded by the fact that one of the employees is the center's only nurse, which leaves the facility without qualified medical personnel and therefore unable to fulfill the requirements set by state law. Judge Irwin and I met with Superintendent Bean yesterday and demanded that he immediately and unconditionally reinstate both employees, which he agreed to do. However, we have received additional information suggesting there could be other serious issues. I have no confidence that these issues will be addressed with the center's current leadership or the governing board that oversees the Bean Juvenile Detention Center. While other centers around the state are under the control of either their sheriff or juvenile court, ours is governed by a board of 3 voting members, meaning the county has virtually no oversight of the center. Unfortunately, after discussing this matter with our law department as to the actions that the mayor's office is empowered to take, I have no authority to directly address the issues at the center. However, I have taken the following steps. My office is recommending that the Knox County Commission change the ordinance governing the Juvenile Detention Center to place the center under the control of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. And I will be speaking to Governor Lee to request immediate state intervention. Please be assured that I am going to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that these issues are addressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Again, that was Mayor Glenn Jacobs earlier this morning outlining his reasoning behind moving for county commissioners to take over control of the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Justice Center. Important things to note. Richard L. Bean, who the center is named after, is still in control of the Richard L. Bean Center. He has been since 1972. Richard Bean himself is 84 years old. Now, we do not believe that these two situations are tied together, but this is not the first instance that an issue has come out of the Richard L. Bean Center. Again, after a 2023 DCS report that showed that the Richard L. Bean Center was keeping kids in solitary confinement longer than any other facility in the state. WVLT in 2023 received DCS reports from 2016 up to 2023 regarding the facility. We found that in October of 2022, DCS had reported that 19 inmates were secluded for 2 hours, while one was secluded for 4 hours. None of them were secluded for 6 hours. State law dictates that you can only keep a child in solitary confinement for 6 hours every 24 hours. That was a state law. The DCS report also outlined that a youth reported being placed in seclusion for 3 days, but it was not reflected in facility documentation. In May of 2023, DCS reported that Richard L. Bean was not putting in times for seclusion and instead leaving some of them blank or putting his initials there as RLB. At the time, the Richard L. Bean Center and its officials had said that they were doing that to protect other kids in their care and employees. One of their board members, one of the three, actually sat down with our Jared Austin at the time and outlined how they felt about this DCS report and other actions being taken by the state. Here was Jared's report back in 2023.
Richard L. Bean runs the Juvenile Center in Knox County, named after himself. The facility now under the microscope after claims they keep inmates in seclusion for too long.
I don't know that that's happened, but I'll find out. That might be one of the things I'll find out.
The Juvenile Center Chair John Valiant says reading a recent ProPublica article about seclusion is the first time he's ever heard of this at the Juvenile Center.
We follow the law. There's no solitary confinement of some special place they get sent. They just get sent to their room.
In 2021, lawmakers created a law prohibiting juvenile centers from keeping inmates in seclusion for more than 6 hours a day. The law also says juvenile inmates can't be secluded for punishment or administrative practices. Valiant says following the passage of that law, Bean looked at policies in place.
When that came in, I think he completely rewrote the rules and regulations about what goes on here.
Valiant stressing they have to protect all of the kids and teens at the Juvenile Center, even doing something new after the most recent allegations.
I told Richard today it wouldn't be a bad idea if I went around and chatted with some of the people that are here and just asked them, what they're in for, how many hours a day they're in different places.
In terms of running the jail, Valiant says some measures are necessary to protect juvenile inmates.
If they ask me, I'd say lock them up until they get straight, or send them to another facility.
Again, that was in an interview with our Jared Austin back in 2023. Now, it's important to note that DCS sent us a statement at that time saying since 2017, when new standards for juvenile detention centers became effective, the Department of Children's Services has worked closely with the Richard L. Bean Center to address deficiencies related to the updated standards, including proper documentation regarding seclusion. The department then says they recommended corrective action and has since continued to work with the facility as state law requires to implement needed changes. Since March of 2022, DCS says licensing staff has observed a significant and consistent improvement in the Bean Center's quality of documentation, and in October of 2022, no deficiencies regarding seclusion practices were found. Approval of the Bean Center is still pending while the facility works towards updating its policy manual. Again, that was in 2023. In our story back in 2023, we also talked with State Representative Gloria Johnson about her feelings. She was very clear that she was upset with what was going on at the Bean Center and said that closer eyes and closer care needed to be taken there, and they needed to take another look at how things were being done at the Juvenile Justice Center.
We should be doing better. We can do things that will ensure that these kids are more successful when they get out, if that is our goal. But if you're just housing them and wanting to send them further down the road of being a criminal, do what they're doing right now.
Again, that was State Representative Gloria Johnson to us in 2023. Again, this is not the first time that the center has been under the microscope. We're outlining what had happened back in 2023 after a ProPublica and Nashville Public Radio report shows that kids were kept in solitary confinement longer than any other facility in the state here in Knox County. Now Mayor Glenn Jacobs is moving to have the Knox County Commission change the ordinance so that the Knox County Sheriff's Office can take control of the day-to-day operation of the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Center. We again sat down with Valiant at the time, asking him about what he believed needed to be done after this ProPublica report. Here's what he told us then.
Well, that would be the job of the trustees, and all. If DCS thinks that the juvenile court over there and Richard are not providing them with something they need, all they'd have to do is call me and I'd see to it that it got done.
Now, at the time we asked Valiant why Bean was not made available, he told us it's real simple. Richard is a friendly guy. He'll get into a conversation with one of you guys or anybody else, and he just talks to you like you're a friend. He'll make jokes and say stuff that comes off differently than you want to say it when you're making a public statement. Again, DCS has been well documented as looking into the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Center, how they run things. 2023 report says that they kept people in solitary confinement for longer than anywhere else in the state. Now Mayor Glenn Jacobs saying after a conversation with Juvenile Court Judge Tim Irwin that the Bean Center fired 2 employees in retaliation for reporting issues at the center to the state. One of those individuals who was fired and later directed Bean to hire her back was the only qualified nurse at the center. Now Mayor Jacobs is looking for the Knox County Commission to take over or to change county law, county rules to be able to take over this center and move it under the guise of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. Mayor Jacobs issuing a statement earlier today. Here is Mayor Jacobs' statement.
Hello, I'm Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. I would like to address the situation that we have all become aware of at the Richard L. Bean Juvenile Detention Center here in Knox County. This past Tuesday, Juvenile Court Judge Tim Irwin called to inform me that Superintendent Bean had fired 2 employees, apparently in retaliation for reporting problems at the center to state investigators. Obviously, this is a very serious matter, compounded by the fact that one of the employees is the center's only nurse, which leaves the facility without qualified medical personnel and therefore unable to fulfill the requirements set by state law. Judge Irwin and I met with Superintendent Bean yesterday and demanded that he immediately and unconditionally reinstate both employees, which he agreed to do. However, we have received additional information suggesting there could be other serious issues. I have no confidence that these issues will be addressed with the center's current leadership or the governing board that oversees the Bean Juvenile Detention Center. While other centers around the state are under the control of either their sheriff or juvenile court, ours is governed by a board of 3 voting members, meaning the county has virtually no oversight of the center. Unfortunately, after discussing this matter with our law department as to the actions that the mayor's office is empowered to take, I have no authority to directly address the issues at the center. However, I have taken the following steps. My office is recommending that the Knox County Commission change the ordinance governing the Juvenile Detention Center to place the center under the control of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. And I will be speaking to Governor Lee to request immediate state intervention. Please be assured that I am going to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that these issues are addressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Again, that was Mayor Jacobs earlier this morning announcing his move for the Knox County Commission to change the ordinance to allow the Richard L. Bean Center to be run by the Knox County Sheriff's Office. We are preparing to sit down with Mayor Jacobs this afternoon here coming about 1:30. We'll have much more on this story coming up on WVLT News beginning at 3:30 and lasting throughout the entirety of the evening. As always, though, you can sign into the WVLT News App and WVLT.tv and read the article that outlines everything you need to know which led to this moment in the action taken by Mayor Glenn Jacobs today, but also stories we've done on the Bean Center in the past, including that 2023 DCS report that WVLT News obtained, as well as Jared's multiple stories on the coverage of the Richard L. Bean Center. For now, inside the WVLT newsroom, I'm Will Puckett. We'll see you beginning on WVLT News at 3:30.